Are you tired of hearing people complain about the world and ready to own the responsibility to make the world a better place? Hey, my name is Brent Simpson, and welcome to this episode of Creating the Future. I believe that within each of us is a yearning to make the world a better place. So let's work together and make that desire a reality. My hope is that today's conversation inspires you as you endeavor to create the future. All right. Does the thought of going back to school put you in cold sweats and make you run in fear? I know it does for a lot of people, and that's what this conversation is all about today. Is I bring on Dr. Alan Griffin, and I emphasize the word doctor because he just got his doctorate as an adult learner who also went and got his master's for that matter as an adult. And he is going to encourage us with some practical advice about going back to school as an adult. Listen, if we're going to create the future, we have to be people that are willing to live on the edge of our incompetence. And sometimes that can be scary. It's not a comfortable place to be, but it stretches us and helps us move ourselves into the future and make a better world around us. And so without further ado, this is a fun conversation I get to have today with my friend, Dr. Alan Griffin. Hey, what's up, guys? I am so excited to have Dr. Alan Griffin on the podcast today. And he is a newly doctor. That's why I emphasize the word doctor. And I know we're in a season right now where people are looking as an adult into going back to school. And I just want to do a short podcast today talking about the experience that Alan had going back to school as an adult, the positives and the negatives. And hopefully through this conversation today, give you some courage to take those steps, because I know I did it as an adult as well, and am doing it right now as well. And but give you some courage to take those steps that are full of fear and uncertainty. And it's been so long since I was in school, but really just encourage you to step out and continue your education. Obviously, as we create futures, it oftentimes coincides with getting a better education in order to do that and giving your name some credibility. So let's talk to my friend, Dr. Alan Griffin. All right, so Alan, or should I call you Dr. Griffin this whole show? What should I do here?
You know, it'd be great if you would call me Dr. Master Bishop Cardinal Griffin. That'd be great.
All right, so,
let's go. Awesome.
So Dr. Griffin, let's talk about this. So, what did what led you to going back to school as an adult? I know you got your master's degree as an adult as well, so maybe that fits into this.
Yes.
But what led you on that path?
You know, it's a few things. I have parents that very much value education.
Yeah.
So growing up, education was always part of the journey. My mom has a master's degree in English from University of Southern California. My dad, 2 master's degrees and an MDiv. My brother, 2 MDivs, now finishing his doctorate. So I just have this family of educators and well-educated folk. And we decided long ago that our whole house would be lifelong learners. And so growing up, I had a library in my home. And it was just something that we always wanted to grow. And I think that's really the impetus, is lifelong learning. Education just helps us learn what we don't know and learn how to grow in what we don't know.
Right. That's so good. All right, so let's make everybody feel better. So now you've gone through a master's program as an adult and a doctorate program as an adult. As you started walking into those steps, what was the big fears that you had that maybe some of our listeners can relate to?
One of the greatest fears, whether it's education or business or anything, is, can I do this?
Yeah.
Am I smart enough? Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Doggone it, do people like me? You know, but the reality is, it's not about being the most intelligent person in the world. It's about using what you have to the best of your ability to accomplish the standard. And the standard has been perfected over centuries for humans. And we are humans, not for the very, very elite, but for humans. If you're human, you can do this. If you are a puppy, like my dog over here, give up now. But if you're human, this is possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I know when I first started my master's degree, and I'm starting my doctorate right now, but when I first started my master's degree, one of the first classes, I had a paper that was 25 to 30 pages that was due. It was like, it wasn't,
Yes.
I take that back. It wasn't one of the first classes. It was the first class. And I'm like, oh my, that's really the longest paper I ever wrote during the whole process of the master's. And I'm like, holy cow, 25, that's like a small book. That's a small book. And I really had to lock myself in a room to overcome that struggle and kind of focus and get knocked out. So did you have any of those kind of experiences where it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can handle this?
You know, I think every program I've been in, from bachelor's degree, master's, the equivalency work that you and I do, and then doctorate, there's always a punch you in the face moment. And it's that challenge that we step to it and do our very best to accomplish it. That proves to us, instead of it being, we sometimes take things the wrong way, Pastor Brent. We go, oh man, this is so difficult. This is crazy. I don't think I can do it. This 25-page paper was to prove to you that you could do it, not to challenge you that you can't. Right. And when you take that other side understanding, they're pulling you forward, not pushing you out. We begin to understand that, man, this was the challenge for me to get in line with what we call scholarly writing. And the minute you get to that point and you start doing it, you go, man, I psyched myself out the whole time thinking I couldn't do this. And here we are writing the way that we were told we would.
Yeah. Don't we sometimes kind of fantasize about it and, I don't know, come in with a false positivity about it. Oh, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be amazing. And this is, and then you get into it and you're finding out there's all these extra hours in the day that you got to spend writing instead of with your family or doing other work things, and everything gets put on hold. And we come in with this false negative or positivity where I think sometimes, and I know I'm going in my doctorate this way, very different.
Yeah.
While you're optimistic and while you're excited about it, you're going, hey, this is going to suck. And I know going into it, there's going to be moments that I want to quit and I'm not going to enjoy this. This is going to stink, but I'm going to persevere anyway. That way I don't come in with a false optimism.
It's very true. And probably the best advice I ever got was from one of our professors at Southeastern University. And he said, the best way to make it through these programs is, you know how you always have time when you're not doing anything? And I'm like, yeah, there's time I'm not doing anything. He goes, well, when you're not doing anything, do something. Do some work. And you're going to discover what I've learned in the master's. And I'm not trying to be crazy about this, but what I learned in master's and doctorate was I have a lot of time. Like, I waste a lot of time. I could sit down in 2 hours and knock out work now that used to take me 2 days because I've learned to focus myself. And I think education is a crucible of focus. And when we learn how to efficiently, effectively focus our energies and not be pulled in 100 directions, contrary to popular belief, Pastor Brett and I want to give you this public service announcement. You cannot multitask. Yeah. Say it with me. I cannot multitask. The minute we get that through my thick skull, whoa, it's amazing the productivity we're able to produce. But it's a sacrifice. There's no doubt about it. It's a sacrifice.
Yeah, I know when I started the master's, we had our dean was coming in for a leadership talk that we were doing. So I happened to be with him. I was probably 2 classes in, maybe 2.5, 3. It was still early on. And I remember having this conversation with him over dinner. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. I mean, this is just killer. I don't know if I can handle this. And he started not laughing irritatingly at me, but just kind of giggling at me. And he said, you're hitting that same wall that everybody hits. Everybody goes through it. It's right here in these first couple classes where it shifts from this optimistic, I'm doing this, to going, my God, I don't know if I can handle this. And it was funny to me because I had a friend, he would be a friend of yours too, but I'm not going to say his name on this podcast. I'm going to call him James. Starts with the same letter. And James was
James, I know who you are.
Right. He was in the master's class after me, and he had seen me graduate and all that, and he started, and he calls me, like, same thing, like 2 or 3 classes in, he calls me, and he's just like, "How did you do this? I can't handle this. I'm not going to get through it." And so there seems to be this recurring theme sometimes when you get started. You go in optimistic,
Yes.
and then, somewhere along the line, like you said, it punches you in the face. And so you just
Mhm.
mentioned disciplines, which I think are so important when we're talking
Yes.
about a area like this. So talk about your disciplines in this process. How did you discipline yourself to get the schoolwork done, especially at the doctorate level where it's even more?
Absolutely. As an evangelist, I spend a lot of my time um, during the day, during the week. If I'm not in, multi-day services, I'm on the phone consulting churches and working with organizations locally and nationally. And so I had to carve out time, strategically carve out time. And for me, it was usually the time that I worked out.
Yeah.
So I gained weight. I had to sacrifice something.
Yeah.
I'd get up earlier and do, my devotion, spend time with my family, pray in the morning with my family. And then they'd go and do their thing. I'd go do office work. And then right around 3 o'clock, when I used to go work out, I would be in schoolwork until dinner. And after dinner, I spent my time with my family. And then as soon as my kids went to bed, I went back to work, and I
Yeah.
would go back to classwork from 8, 9 o'clock till 11, 12 o'clock, sometimes later, to accomplish what I needed to accomplish. And usually that was 3 or 4 days a week. What I wanted to do, there's different value for everyone. I wanted to make sure that this growth did not cost my children anything.
Yeah. That's
It
good.
cost my wife and I, but it did not cost my children. I didn't want them to even notice that I was doing it. And then at the end, when I was doing, my dissertation defense and all that, then they noticed
Right.
because I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
ah! But all the other time, I just looked like I was working, at the table. And I think, can I say something?
Yeah.
Don't complain.
Yeah.
Complaining didn't help me. It
That's
didn't
good.
help Pastor Brent.
That's good.
It's not going to help you. Now, with your classmates, you can drink a whole lot of whining together. It's awesome. But with everybody else, don't complain. They won't understand no matter how much you try to explain it to them. They will never understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
That's what you have classmates for. Share with them. Let everyone else live in the joy of their ignorance.
Yeah.
It's awesome for them.
Yeah.
And then they become a source of joy to you because they don't know the stress that you've been dealing with. And you can just step out of what you're doing into the real world again and enjoy that. And
Mhm.
then go back to your education world, go back to your scholarly world and complain and all that amongst other scholars.
Yeah. That's such good advice. That's such good advice. So practical. All right, let me ask you this. Obviously, right now, for anybody listening to this podcast that's thinking of moving forward in their education, even if it's the bachelor's degree. I personally, I know you didn't, but I got my bachelor's degree as an adult. I went back, and I wouldn't do that any differently if I had it do over again
Nice.
either, because I wanted to learn at that point compared to the 19, 20-year-old who's just trying to get through the class. I actually wanted to learn, so the educational experience was better for me. But adult
Yes.
learners who are wanting to go back to college, there's a lot of options and different types, but now we live in this world that so much of it is online. I mean, right the second everything's online, but even beyond that, so much of it is online. You don't have to do face-to-face classes that seem more intimidating. So with your school and such at Southeastern University, where you graduated from, how much of it was online compared to in person? How did you do that?
We had a quarterly online engagement. I think master's degree was more than quarterly, but quarterly, where every 3 months we would go into in-person classes for one solid week.
Yeah.
During that week, we might have 3 different professors during that week, sometimes 2, periodically 1, and it was very concentrated. It'd be 8 to 10 hours a day, usually about 10 hours of engagement with that professor, and your brain hurts by the
Right.
end of
Right.
each day. You're gaining so much, and so note taking becomes important. Another practical application is coming up with what works best for you for note taking,
Hmm.
because you'll take a lot.
Yeah. That's good. I think, there's so many types of ways of doing school now. There's so many opportunities, no matter what your background. There's really not a lot of excuses if you want to not to do it, because there's
That's
schools that
right.
are entirely online. There's schools that you physically go to, and then there's all the hybrids. My master's degree, we actually went to school for 3 days in a row, all day, like you talked about. It was the
Hmm.
cohort model. I think you did something similar. And so you went for 3 whole days, 8-hour days, or however long. You usually ate dinner with
Yeah.
the class. You lived with them essentially for 3 whole days,
Yes.
got a ton of information. Then you did the rest of it online after that was over. And in the way I did it, it was an accelerated program. So it was 3 whole days once a month. Every month we had 3 whole days.
Oh, wow.
And so it was really pushing it. But then once those days were over, it was all online. But there's all these hybrids, there's different styles.
Yes.
And education is such an important part of creating the future, because if you're going to create the future, you have to create it in your own self first. And you can't
Yes.
just keep echoing the things that other people say. So you got to get educated to the point that you can say new things, and you get that
Mm,
philosophical depth to be able to draw from, where you're not just repeating, what everybody else says. So let me ask you this.
it's
How
good.
are you a better person having gone through this?
um, they never broke me. I'm an evil person. No,
I guess that's not even the right question. A better person. I guess what I mean is, how are you
I'm
more
just kidding.
suited to do your career and what you do
Yes.
because you come through? You were a great person before and after. I know that.
No, I just thought that was awesome. Um, I think that we face a lot of crucibles in life. We face the crucible of physical health, spiritual enrichment, where that spiritual formation. Um, but there's another crucible, and there's many of them. And there's another one that many of us can engage that we might not have now, and that is the crucible of education. And to struggle and to strain and to work to accomplish something in education is uh, not a high calling, but a high level battle
Mhm.
that takes us from looking at life as a pedestrian, not a less smart person. That's not what it's about. It's not about smart. It's about having endurance, looking at life as a pedestrian, or looking at life as the driver of the bus.
That's good.
And the driver of the bus sees the road differently. They see it from a higher level, not because they're better than anyone else, but because they've been trained and equipped to lead and do more. And that's what education does. It equips us through struggle, through trouble, through pain, to grow in our ability to lead ourselves and to help other people, not just with history, but with, like you said, a personal philosophy and an understanding of your identity and what's around us that we can use
Yeah.
to serve others.
Yeah, those papers and those long papers that we joke about, and fighting over your dissertation and
Yeah,
such, they force us to think so much deeper than anything in regular life forces you to think about.
that's
Generally
right.
speaking, most of our lives are relatively shallow, and we never go into the depth. But those papers, they just force you into the deep end, and push you in the deep end of the pool, so to speak. So if I'm understanding
Absolutely.
you correctly, and I think this is a good analogy for this, it's almost like tools in your tool belt, right? And so
Yes.
all these classes that you take equip you to be able to do more things in life, because you're adding more tools, and not just the doctorate as a tool, but all these
Yeah.
specific classes. Because at the end of the day, it's not about being called Dr. Griffin. At the end of the day, it's
Mm-mm.
about empowering your ability to effectively serve more people.
That's it. After these many years, now I'm Batman. I've got the tool belt,
Got the
and
bat
and
belt,
I
right?
and I think what it helps us do is, as you're saying, walk into situations that before we'd be like, I think I know. Somebody said, and now you walk in going, you know what, God, what do you want me to say right now? You've
Yeah.
given me file after file of information, but now you're not just thinking about delivering information to people. You're thinking about what will help them the most. And you start to partner with the Holy Spirit through wisdom and knowledge to draw out things to serve others. And I think that's, for me, for my ministry, for my life, that's what I want.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so good. All right. Well, the last question, would you do it again if you had it to do over again?
Is the screen frozen?
Oh.
I had to think about that for a moment. No, absolutely would do it again. And here's what's awesome about school. The access that we end up with having to educators is huge. You would think because of maybe you went to college, maybe you went to community college, maybe you just did a couple classes and went, this isn't for me. I think that might have happened in our history because, like Brent said, we were so young that we didn't value people the way we do now. When you value people and you go to the educational space, the academy is what we call it, you get there and go, not only is Dr. Ealer, Dr. Archer, these different great leaders, not only are they great educators, but they're incredible people that have enriched my life. And so doing it again, the workload tells me, oh, I don't want to, I can't, it's painful. But the people that walked me through this journey are the reason I made it through this journey and are the reason I would do it again.
Yeah.
It's always those incredible professors, instructors, educators.
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah, I know in my world, probably the greatest thing that I ever did for my own ministry and helping people and serving people along the way was going back and getting my master's degree. I think it empowers you so often to be able to do the things that you want to be able to do and lead from the front like you need to. And again, instead of just repeating what everybody else says, having a depth that the knowledge just comes from yourself. You're not having to research every little thing. And yeah, I think that's really beneficial. And I would throw this out there. Obviously, education is very expensive, but there's grants and there's help and there's different ways to do it. And while it is expensive, I definitely think it is still worth it at the same time. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, it is. It is worth it all the way. I tried to pay my way through my master's. I kind of paid it as I went. The doctorate, I got help. I got creative and to step into that. But it's absolutely worth it. America, you listening? You go into debt for all kinds of things that don't matter.
Yeah.
If this gives you a little bit of debt, don't get upset about that. That's the least of your concerns.
Yeah.
What I'm concerned more about, Pastor, is the times I got up as a 22-year-old preacher, as a 25-year-old preacher, and I preached something that was not biblically accurate. And how does the Holy Spirit anoint a lie?
Right.
So if people say, man, that message was anointed, the perception of the presence of God resting, hovering on that message is predicated on it being truth. Yeah. And when, as ministers, preaching the truth is the most important thing, the best we can. And education helps us to stay in line with that. And it's a huge thing. And I believe you're going to have miracles in the process.
Amen.
I was in the middle of my dissertation writing. I was sick as a dog. I didn't have bird flu. I didn't have COVID. I just had something, the crud in me. Yeah. And I was writing and I was laying in someone else's house in the basement, sick. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, if you get up, I'll heal you. And I got up and I started writing again, started working on my dissertation, and instantly the healing of God came over me. The very next morning, I preached 3 services. That night, I kept writing again. I wrote 20 pages in my dissertation the very day that I came down sick. And I believe that if God is going to heal me to write, there's value to that. Yeah. If he's going to heal me to work on education, he's proving the value of education through that, in my experience.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. I think my light just went off. So anybody watching this instead of just listening, sorry, I'm in the dark now. So I
talked too long. That's the problem. Sorry.
No. You were great. You were great. I'm a big believer that who we really are is made up of the billions of life experiences we have. Besides the things that are DNA that you can't control, skin color, eye color, height, some of those things. But who you really are, what really matters to you, the reason you talk the way you do, the reason you vote the way you do, the reason just who you really are is really the millions and billions of life experiences that got you to where you are today. And some of those experiences happen to you. some of those you're pushed into, like elementary school and high school for most of us, right? We went whether we wanted to or not. Mom's going to whoop us if we didn't go. But then there's other moments that are intentional experiences that you intentionally put yourself into, and sometimes they're hard. You don't necessarily like it the entire time, but you know it's good for you. And for so many of us as adult learners, college and university is that way for us. It's an intentional opportunity to create new experiences, new protocols in our brain to fire different ways, and to get a depth that we wouldn't normally have. So, all right, Alan, do you want to add anything else? Dr. Griffin, I should say, do you want to add anything else?
I can't wait to call you Dr. Simpson. That's going to happen soon. So,
it should be in about 2 years. However, obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic, so finances, and we're just working through that. So at this moment, I'm still planning to officially start in August. And that's at this moment. And, obviously the whole world is kind of getting turned upside down right now. So we got to see what happens. But at the moment, I'm still planning to go forward.
That's
all right.
Awesome.
So
you'll be something. Hey, final thing I want to say. Rich Wilkerson said this to me years ago. My spiritual dad, when I was talking to him about master's degree, and we did our master's degree together. He said, "Alan, how old are you going to be in 2 years if you don't get your master's degree?" And I told him, I think at that time I'll be 40. He goes, "Well, how old will you be with your master's degree in 2 years?" He goes, "You can either be 40 without it or 40 with it. The choice is up to you." And so I choose to add, and I think it's important to be a lifelong learner.
That's so good. That's so good. All right. So for you guys who are not familiar with Dr. Griffin, he runs a great ministry, speaks in churches, most obviously, but he also speaks in school assemblies, also for businesses and corporations and different leadership talks with them. I highly recommend him. One of the best leadership talks I ever did or had an outsider do for our staff was several years ago when Alan did a Zoom call with our staff. So if you're a business leader and you just want somebody right now to be able to speak life over your team and to give a different perspective, hook up with Alan. He's also a great author, got a couple books in the works right now, and has written a great one called Undefeated. And so Alan, if people want to get a hold of you and contact and get you in or get a book or something, how do they do that?
Sure. For all my friends that are in the business sphere, we love you. That's our motivational site, which is alangriffin.com. You can just email us, call us. Of course, we're going to answer right now. There's no distractions. And then for all of our ministry friends, we have another site just for you, agministries.com. You can go there and check out all that we're doing right now. And we're gearing up for online sermons that we're going to start distributing. So get ready for some fun stuff.
I love it. I love it. We're in a season where you can either return or you can recreate. And I think we need to be people that are recreating as we return. We're not just returning. So
that's right.
All right. Love you guys who are watching. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I hope this encouraged you. And I hope there's some people that you end up going back to school because of these conversations. Maybe it gave you some hope and some clarity. And I don't know, maybe it was good for you. All right. God bless you guys. Thanks for being a part of Creating the Future. I hope you enjoyed this conversation today, and I especially hope it added value to you. If you enjoyed it, would you do me a favor and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider? It really helps to get the word out. And of course, if you share this content with your friends, that would be great too. And until next time, I hope you continue creating a better future. I look forward to being with you again soon.